quick report from the Treasurer's office and then tell you how we're going to win this thing this November. So when I came into the Treasurer's office, it was a bloody mess, both ethically and fiscally. We discovered there was this guy every day who was driving checks from our office in Columbus to KeyBank in Cleveland. About $200 million a month, not even in a Brinks truck. So we asked the question, if individual citizens can do banking on an iPhone or on a personal computer, why can't state government? So through leveraging a little technology and applying a little common sense, that gentleman's no longer driving checks up and down I-71. Your hard-earned money is not at risk of flying around somewhere around Mansfield. And big things and small, we've cut about $1.2 million from our operating budget. Of the $400,000 of the budget we inherited from our predecessor, we took about $400,000, sent it back to the General Revenue Fund, to the taxpayers, said, you know what, we don't need this. We could do it with a tighter belt. And on top of that, while the U.S. credit rating was unfortunately downgraded for the first time in American history, and about 14 government funds around the country were downgraded, we received from Standard & Poor's a AAA rating, the highest rating we can receive on the $4 billion fund I manage.
We can re-elect President Obama and see more failed big government spending that believes it's the solution to America's problems. Buy a house you can't afford, the government will bail you out. Rack up student loans you can't afford, the government will bail you out. Make bad business decisions, and the government will bail you out. And don't forget about free health care our country can't afford. President Reagan said, "Government exists to protect us from each other. Where government has gone beyond its limits is in deciding to protect us from ourselves." Let's avoid the path that Greece is on and other European countries, and let's choose a new path and elect our nominee to preserve, protect, and defend the American dream for all future generations of Americans. God bless all of you. I look forward to being on the campaign trail as we elect the next president of the United States. Thank you.
People look at Rick Santorum now and say, yeah, I can see him in the Oval Office. Hey. I can see him as President of the United States. Because to run for president, it's not enough to run the other guy down. It's not enough to spend a whole bunch of money and try to blow him out in state after state. Because eventually the American people figure it out. If you don't have a message, if you don't know where you want to take this country, they're going to turn around and say no. But if you have a vision and you know where you want to go and you have a set of core values, as Rick Santorum does, you can articulate that vision, then people look up and say, yeah.
It really is great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Let me tell you a little story. I love, Mr. Chairman, I love what you do here in this county. I just love you can tell this is a gritty grassroots party. This is a party that organizes. This is a party that has candidates who go out there and fight and work hard. Go out and, as Josh was talking about, knock on doors and really have to take it. Why? Because you're outnumbered. It's tough. You know, growing up in southwestern Pennsylvania, I mean, you know, I was the first conservative elected to Congress down there and, you know, probably prior to the Great Depression. And, you know, you just had to go out and work for it. No one gave me a chance in any of the races that I ran. I was an underdog. The greatest gift I have as a politician is everybody underestimates me. And it is, of all the things you can have as a politician, of any gift you can have, that is the best one. Because they never take you seriously. And so when you go out, as I did in this race, and did 381 town hall meetings in the state of Iowa, 800 town hall meetings so far since this campaign started. Just go out and talk to folks and meet with folks. People say, how did you do it? Well, that's how I've always done it. Went out and do what you do here in Summit County. Just go out and work harder than everybody else. Because that's what you got to do. That's what I was taught from my parents and grandparents. You've heard about them, those immigrant parents and grandparents that came to this country. And the one, my dad said, it's three things that'll make you successful. Work, work, and work. That was it. Everything was work. So when I went out in my first campaign, I was It's a pretty important year in my life, 1990, and I met the woman I loved the year before, and we got married that year in 1990, and went out and started to decide to run for Congress, and we went out and knocked on doors. That's how we were able to win. We knocked on almost 20,000 doors running for Congress. And I'll tell you a little story about one of those instances and what knocking for doors. It was in Upper St. Clair, which is outside of Pittsburgh. Nice little neighborhood. Well, it was one of those neighborhoods. It was a development. You went in and, well, it was sort of a self-contained. It was one way in, one way out. So I parked it was an August afternoon. It was very hot. And I parked in the entrance of the development. Started working up one side of the street all by myself. I didn't have a whole passel of volunteers, even though I was running for Congress. No one gave me a chance. In fact, there was a poll taken. A pollster that I hired, he took a poll in April of that year, and he gave me the poll results. He wouldn't even call me. He just sent me a memo. And he said, "You have no chance." He said, "Your name recognition is 6%. And this was 5 months before the election. And you have no money." He said, "You have a name recognition of 6%. Well, I picked up the phone and called him. I said, "Wait a minute, that's pretty good. You know, Santorum isn't a household name or anything. It's not like Smith. You know, everybody's going to recognize somebody named Smith. If you know my name, you actually know my name." And he said, "Rick," he said, "on any survey, 8% of the people will say they know somebody, whether they know them or not. So you're 2% below nobody." Undeterred. We went out and kept knocking on doors, as I did that day. So I'm walking, I figured it was about a 4-hour thing looking at the street lists. And so I'm about halfway through the neighborhood, back in a cul-de-sac. I knock on the door, and this little elderly lady comes to the door, and my stick is, we all know this, I bet you about half the room here has knocked on doors at one period of time, maybe more. And so I had my little brochure. I knocked on the door. She came to the door. She had a little dog that was barking, and I said, "Hi, I'm Rick Santorum. I'm running for Congress." I opened up the screen door to slip around the brochure, and she looked at me and goes, "Oh, you look so hot." She goes, "Why don't you come in for a glass of water?" What do you do when someone comes in and says to come in and ask for a glass of water? Yeah. Oh, no, you don't go. I don't go. No, when you come in, no, you never stop. You just keep going. Otherwise, you're not going to get your doors in. And I said, "No, ma'am, thank you very much." No, she says, "I insist. You look really warm. You really need to come in." And I said, "No, ma'am, thank you very much." And she insisted, so of course she insisted. And I said, "Fine." I was 2 hours in. Okay, a little water wouldn't hurt. And she comes in and she goes, "Well, no, come on in and sit down." I said, "No, I'll come in and water, but no, I'm not going to come and sit." No, I insist. Well, I knew what she was going to do, so I said, "Okay, fine." So I went in and sat down. No, her dog is running around barking, and she goes in and gets her a glass of water, and I sit down and I come back, and she hands me the glass of water, and the dog jumps up and hops in my lap. Okay, fine. So I pet the dog, have a sip or two of water. We're chatting. The next thing I know, there is a warm sensation on my lap. And I jump up, and on my tan pants is a huge wet spot where you don't want a huge wet spot. And so I jumped up to look at it, and she was aghast. She reached for my pants and said, "Let me dry that off." I backed away and said, "No, that'll be fine." She goes, "Let me get a hairdryer." Heaven forbid. And she goes, I said, "No, thank you very much." I start to move out the door. She goes, "Well, take your pants off. I'll put them in the dryer." That was the last I heard from her because I was out the door. So now I'm walking down the sidewalk at the end of the sidewalk. I'm 2 hours into my walk. I'm a mile at least from where my car is. It's still lots of daylight left. What do? Undeterred, I soldiered on. Figured it's August afternoon. There weren't that many people home in the first place. It's a hot day. It'll dry. So I look at my sheet, and I say, "Well, who's the next door?" Well, the next door is a name I recognized. Anybody remember the closer for the 1979 world champion Pittsburgh Pirates? Kent Tekulve, correct. That's Kent Tekulve's house next door. what's the chance he's going to be home? So I go striding up confidently to the door, knowing full well he's not home, and I gently knock on the door. So I wait, 3 or 4 seconds and start writing my notes. Sorry, I missed you, Mr. Tekulve. I'm about to put it in the door, and the door opens. And there stands between me and the screen door is between me and him, Kent Tekulve. And I take my brochure, I get closer to the door, so the bottom part of the screen door covers what needed to be covered. And I said, hi, Mr. Tekulve, I'm Rick Santorum, I'm running for Congress, and I go to open the door to slip it around, and he pushes the door open as I back up, and he does this. Then he looks back up at me, and I say to him, Mr. Tekulve, I'm so excited to meet you. That is a true story, every word of it. And I got Kent Tekulve's vote, I'll have you know. The Declaration provides the why of America, who we are. When it said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We are a country that is different than every other country in the history of the world. Why? Because for the first time in the history of the world, we looked at every man and woman, everyone, all men, and said that they were equal and had rights because they were creations of God. In France, they had a similar constitution, but their founding document talked about 3 things. Liberty, good. Equality, good. Fraternity, problematic. Where did their rights come from? Each other. Once government can give you rights, as we have seen in the last couple of weeks, they can tell you how to exercise those rights. Once you put the power in the government, a court, a president, to tell you what you can and can't do. In France, it ended with the guillotine. Unless we are anchored to something eternal, something bigger, then America is lost. And this election isn't about whether we will be a group of states or one country, but it will be what country we will be, and whether we will be a country that still believes in freedom and opportunity, still believes in limited government and the ability to build a great society from the bottom up. That is the charge in this election. I believe that we are different. We are different than the way the rest of the world has gone. We are different because all of your ancestors came here from countries. All of your ancestors came here from countries because they were different than the people that stayed behind. I know. My grandfather came to this country, worked the mines in western Pennsylvania outside of Johnstown. I've gone back and visited my relatives. I have bunches of them in Italy. They are wonderful people. Have a great glass of wine with them. Wow, is the food great. But they are nothing like my grandfather. They are perfectly happy being ruled. They are perfectly happy not working hard. And the most common comment I got was, why do you work so hard? They're different. Your DNA, because of the people who came and brought you here in your past, is different than the rest of the world. That's why we are special. It is not just our founding documents, but it's the people who were attracted to those founding documents that built this community. That's what America is all about. Barack Obama doesn't see it that way. He sees you differently. In 2008, America was struggling economically. Markets were crashing. People were worried. And they wanted to have a candidate for president. They wanted a president who they could believe in. Ladies and gentlemen, America is a country that doesn't need a president that they can believe in. America has always succeeded when they have a president that believes in them. I saw a poll today that 46% of the people in this country believes America's best days are behind us. I am not one of that 46%. I believe this country is on the verge of something great, something that will transform not just America, but the world. We have an opportunity to remind ourselves about what made us the greatest country in the history of the world. We need a vision and someone to cast that vision for the people in Ohio, the epicenter, the ground zero, the place that must be won to win. We need you. Will you help us? Thank you and God bless you.
What a great speech. You know, folks, we may have a new Ronald Reagan. What a great speech. We have the results of the straw poll, and we're going to give them to you right now, but my wife always tells me I forget to look to the left. And Bob Cupp is running for re-election, and let's make sure we elect him. And Lynn Slaby is running for re-election. Let's re-elect him. And Tony DeVitas is running to hold on to his seat. Let's make sure he gets elected. Gloria Rogers is running. Looking to the left. I know. Gloria for War 3. There you go. Give him those numbers.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening. Senator Santorum, thank you for that patriotic prayer. Tonight, the folks here in this room, 1,068 of them, cast a ballot as the largest straw poll in the state of Ohio. And you have said tonight with these results what Ohio will say on March 6th. Ohio is Rick Santorum country. With 790 votes, 74% of you chose Rick Santorum as your preferential candidate for President of the United States. 160 or 15% for Mitt Romney, 5% for Ron Paul, and 6% for Newt Gingrich. Congratulations, Senator.
Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. God bless.